Hello, this is Dr. Liz Smith with Balanced Living Counseling Services and True Understanding Ministries. This is day 27 of our Breathe Mental Health Challenge. And today, June 27, 2022, is PTSD Awareness Day, I believe. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about with the PTSD awareness is just to focus on reminding you guys. We have shared it earlier in this challenge, but I want to remind you guys of what some of the PTSD symptoms is. You'll see where I kind of got this visual at, and it's describing. I like the picture, so that's why I pulled it from online. It describes the symptoms of PTSD. So one of the things what is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, when you have either witnessed or experienced firsthand a life-threatening event. And as a result of that, you have very specific reactions to that. And it lasts over 30 days. From the time of the event up until 30 days, we call that acute stress disorder. But once it persists after those 30 days, that's how we categorize it in the mental health field as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's not just military that ends up having this disorder. If you experience any trauma, and everybody's trauma is relative to them, then you are subject, or you could end up with these symptoms. So let's review some of these symptoms. Avoid it. You try to avoid thinking about the trauma. Somebody may want to talk to you about it, and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about the trauma, whether it was someone you saw being hurt, whether it was you being in battle and was during a deployment, something you did, something you saw, something you experienced, something you heard. You don't want to talk about it. Seeing and witnessing a person pass away that you love. And even if you saw a person that you didn't know, but definitely we don't realize that sometimes grief, losing the loss of a loved one and being in the throes of whatever it takes, whatever's going on that causes them to pass away, even if you know it was planned and you're in the hospital, it can still be a traumatic experience. Avoid talking about the trauma. We talked about that. We're thinking about it or talking about it. And then the next one, it talks about easily frightened. You have an elevated startle response. Someone can be just kind of coming up from behind and say, hey, and you jump. So you have an elevated startle response, easily frightened. The next one, it talks about negative moods, whether you're depressed and down. It could be very much irritable. I don't know if that's here. Well, it is down here. It talks about aggressive behavior. Sometimes someone who is dealing with PTSD and trauma, unfortunately, if you don't get help, sometimes you end up being aggressive towards someone, toward a loved one. So this kind of giving you some reasons why it's so important to deal with this and not try to avoid it, not try to stuff it down, not try to put it in a box and ignore that it's there. The other you can see is negative thinking. Just ruminating and think about negative things, negative situations that has gone on. That can be PTSD for you. Always on guard, hyper vigilant. You got security up in your house. You're hyper vigilant when you're having to go out to the store, anywhere, restaurant. Driving, hyper vigilant, always on guard. Avoiding places. You're avoiding going somewhere like public places. Maybe even things that you used to do, like avoiding activities, like going to the beach or getting on a boat or going to a restaurant or driving in a car. If you had a severe car accident, you have PTSD from that car accident, you avoid being in a car. Whomever or whatever the situation is regarding, sometimes you avoid those areas. We used to do those things together at this place, so you avoid that place. Having flashbacks. Having flashbacks about the incident, what happened. And it could have been a near death. This one is saying flashbacks, and you can see the person looks like they probably were drowning, maybe. What if you got out of there, you made it through, you almost drowned, you almost died, and you still have a traumatic response to it? Just being around water in the bathtub, even in a shower, or just the sound of it sometimes can give you a flashback. Different things can trigger you based on different situations. So having those flashes of those images, that's hard. Having a hard time being able to concentrate. Can't concentrate, can't focus. You try to focus, but then it goes right back to it. That's a part of your, that can be a part of PTSD. Bad dreams and flashbacks kind of go hand in hand. Having a bad dream about it. Having a bad dream. This one, as you can see, is kind of focusing on like the person was swimming and had an incident. So they're avoiding the places, avoiding activities around the beach. Having a bad dream about, flashbacks about dreaming, bad dreams about swimming, rather, because they had that near tragic incident. Sleeping difficulty, having a hard time sleeping, having a hard time going to sleep, having a hard time staying asleep. For some people, usually PTSD, most people, they are so stressed that they can't sleep, and intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, and dreams wake them up. Some people, if it's coupled with depression, sometimes you don't want to get up, you don't want to sleep. You don't want to wake up, you sleep a lot as part of that depression. But also remember, keep in mind that anxiety is so taxing on your body that it can cause you to feel so exhausted and tired. So you're exhausted, tired, feel beat down, worn down, but maybe can't sleep or can't stay asleep. Or like I said, sometimes it's the other way around and you sleep too much. That's an option. That's something that happens. Engaging, here it says substance abuse, but that could be any type of substance, or just think about addictive behaviors. Whatever your addictive behavior is, maybe you had quit it, and then next thing you know, whatever that drug of choice, whatever that habit of choice was, then you're back into the throes of doing those things again. Because of the PTSD, trying to numb the pain, trying to escape, feeling guilty or shame in different ways. Sometimes we have survivor's guilt, that we're still here and that person left. We blame ourselves that we could have done more. Different things that are going on, or we feel shame about the abuse that happened to you, and you feel shame about it, and you feel guilty. Maybe I should have told somebody, and maybe they're right, I was asking for it. Things of that nature. They're not right, by the way, but those are some of the things that we think about. Loss of interest, and that's part of the depression as well. But you can be so overwhelmed you don't want to have interest, but that's a part of that mood, those negative moods where you don't feel like being around people, you isolate. That's part of the depression. So sometimes, as you can see, PTSD can be coupled with those moods of depression. And sometimes we don't realize that that's part of it. Okay. This is a trauma awareness that I got from Justin Rusati. I don't know, PhD. So let's talk about some of these types of traumas. Interpersonal traumas. Some of those traumas can be intimate partner violence, developmental traumas. When the child was, childhood traumas, we'll put it that way. Adverse childhood experiences as well. Natural or human caused traumas, like an individual trauma, physical injuries, group trauma, first responder traumas, military service members, like deployments, natural or human caused traumas, natural disasters. Here in our neck of the woods, that would be like something you went through with Katrina, 911, different types of, 9/11, different types of traumas that have happened in group situations. It wasn't just you, but a group of you dealt with it. How about community and cultural traumas? Racial trauma is a big one. Historical or generational traumas. Sometimes those traumas are something that's passed on that that may have been reported to you, based on maybe, like I said, generational trauma that happened to your family, or that happened to, like I said, it says mass trauma, happened to a group of people based on culture, whether it's gender or their race. The biggest one usually is race, based on religion, can be another. Political terror or war, refugees, torture, and being captured. So there's so many different dynamics. We talk about natural causes or accidents that happen. That's one. Also, all affects a person's traumatic stress reaction, substance abuse, mental disorders, ability to have resilience in daily life functioning. Is affected by different things. And so these are some of the things that we go through that causes us to have PTSD. So how can we implement and maintain sustained self-care? Sustained social care. A lot of times, when this one I pulled up, as you can see, is a continuum for coping with racism and trauma. How do we, in the world, do we do that? Well, you'll see now that a lot of us mental health providers, especially mental health providers of color, we are very much well aware of racial trauma being a thing. Looking at what happened in 2020, rather specifically the events that happened with George Floyd and so many other different dynamics of racism and racial targeting events that happened. So we've been I realized, wow, racial trauma is happening. This is PTSD. This is racial trauma. And we need to do our part to help. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm reaching out and letting people know that we are here, and to make sure that you avail yourselves to people in your community, mental health providers that can provide those services for you. As you can see on this board, on the screen, it talks about mental health hotlines, different types of groups, racial equity tools, racial healing and racism recovery resources, self-care guides for allies. So that's one. Interpersonal and family resources to help you and your family meet their basic needs. Tools for talking to kids about racism. Tips for fostering connection. Then we have community resources for engaging at the local level. Resources for talking about race in your community. Organizations focused on trauma and resilience. So they're all over. We just have to look for them. I don't have a list on all of them, but I do encourage you to look for those in your area. But if you give me a call, if you give us a look, then we'll definitely do our part to link you with those resources. Another one is national and global resources. Organizations working to advance racial justice. They're always there. But the first thing, before you can do social care, the social justice piece, make sure you take care of you. Make sure that you focus on self-care and healing from that PTSD, healing from that racial trauma, because it's a real thing. So what do? You go to a provider that you say, I have PTSD. I know I do. I dealt with a racial trauma. Even if they don't want to be comfortable with you diagnosing yourself, what you do know is when you are experiencing a racial trauma. That's a real thing. And if that's the case, make sure that you reach out to get the resources that you need. The next thing that I want to talk about is PTSD.va.gov. This is something that everybody has access to. As you can, it's not just for military, but it's for service members and their families. Is there also the resources are widely available for anyone to use. So going to this PTSD.va.gov and looking at these very great resources. It's got a self-help group line. It has treatment companions. These are different apps that you can actually literally download that talk you through things. But it doesn't take the place of talk therapy. So I definitely encourage you to avail yourself to talk therapy and talking to someone. I am here with Balanced Living Counseling Services. So I say go with www.balancedlivingcounseling.org or go to trueunderstandingministries.org. And if nothing else, go to drleahseminars.org for online. I look forward to talking to you soon, and I hope and I wish you hope and healing and health. And I want you to breathe in hope. I want you to breathe in peace and breathe in healing everywhere you're hurting. And I look forward to seeing you soon. All right, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow, June 28th. We're only 3 days out from our mental health challenge, and we'll be done. All right. So look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and have a great one. Invest in your mental health. Self-care is mental health care. All right. Bye-bye.